It's about making the world, it's about social justice, it's about economic justice, gender justice, it's about making the world a much better place and a fairer place. And it's about starting at the grassroots. It's about starting with people's everyday lives and everyday concerns and seeing how those can change.
Politics to me is two-pronged. You have the politics of making rules, regulations, which happens here in Stormont. You also have your work as a politician involved in helping your local community.
Politics for me is about change. So it's about improving the quality of life of people who live in a particular space. It's about recognising that we have so much in common in terms of our humanity, and that we should all be using our strengths to try to improve the world around us, really.
Politics to me is not what you would say, or I don't consider it as politics with a capital P. To me, politics is a way that I can change society by being involved in the legislative process, part of democracy, being part of the decision-making process. But at the end of it, my politics is about changing things for the better for people.
Politics, I suppose, should be about making change for the right reasons and in the right way. And that's why I think it's so important that people now become politically active and more involved in their communities and just trying to make their voices heard, because I think it's more important now than ever.
Politics should be about creating change and hearing ideas and representing what people want. So that can be done, from your school youth groups, from your students' committees, from students' unions, from a class representative, right through to elected office. But even just by, staying connected to my community, that's political. By being an activist, that's political. By joining campaigns, that's political. By, even if it's attending Pride every year, that's political. That's giving your personal support. That's coming down, taking an interest. And the more informed you become, the clearer your ideas are. So just stay active. Politics is not just one thing that people tell you from on high what's going to happen. There's a lot of role reversal goes on there, and I think that the best politics happens at ground level, because that's where, in my whole history, I have seen the best change happen, whether that be through physical changes or community changes or personal changes. But probably the more powerful ones are cultural changes and changing people's hearts and minds because you've got stuck into an issue that you really believe in and you're passionate about.
Well, my family always have been involved in politics, and I would honestly say from I was probably 11, 12, I would have been out with my dad out canvassing, and I would also have been in attendance on polling day and at different counts. So I always had an interest in politics. But as I went through university and went through my school life, politics played quite a role, and I would have done quite a bit of work experience in the political realm.
I got into politics. I studied it when I was younger at school, but I was always very active around social justice issues. So I would have went on anti-war demonstrations, and I got very angry at what I saw as injustices in society, disadvantage, marginalisation. The fact that in North Belfast, just because you happened to be born into a certain part of the city, you had worse life chances than someone born in the south part of the city. So all of these things used to get me very agitated and angry, and I didn't really know what to do with that. And then someone said to me one day, well, look, you can put your money where your mouth is and take a step forward.
I'm afraid I'm one of those people that's came into politics rather later in life. I was a teacher for almost over 30 years, and I also throughout that time I enjoyed listening to politics, I enjoyed history, and have always had an interest from a child growing up in politics. And I do believe that's why I eventually made the decision to go into politics.
I think after a while of studying politics and economics at school and university, I just became more interested in social politics and economics and trying to make a difference in people's lives. So that's kind of what sparked my interest. I was co-opted to the Assembly in 2012 to replace Conor Murphy, and I've been here for almost 5 years now, and I've been through 2 elections in a very short space of time.
When I became a mother, the peace process was being set in motion, ceasefires were being announced, and politics was starting to look very different in Northern Ireland. We also had the Women's Coalition at that time who came forward, and I think that they really grabbed my attention. Their language and their call was very different from anything else that I had heard, and I really started paying attention. Plus, I was also responsible for 2 new bairns in the world, and what was I going to do with them, what was I going to offer them, and what was the world going to be for them. So I started to take politics an awful lot more personally. I went back to education as a mature student, and I graduated from Queen's in 2009 with my politics degree, and the Green Party was the only party I felt that I could have joined and still been myself and held firm to the beliefs and the changes that I wanted to see happen. So I felt that I could do that within that party, and I started campaigning, and 4 years later got elected.
I never intended having a political life. I was working very happily in community transport, providing accessible solutions for people with disabilities and older people. But I found through that work that I needed to put a little bit of pressure on our politicians to make sure there was the right budget. I also got very cross when my local council tried to remove 2 rural playgrounds. Having a disabled brother who's like Peter Pan, the boy that never grew up, 6 foot tall, like a 4-year-old. That playground was the only option that he had for getting out of the house. So I fought against the council, and it was actually the Alliance Party councillor that was the only one that showed any interest. So of course he pulled me along to a meeting, and the next thing I was secretary and then vice chair of the party and councillor and now an MLA.
I think the best example that young women can take is not to be held back by feeling that they have to have structures and organisations in order to take action. Yeah, it's a matter of having the eyes open enough to see issues and to see potential and to see challenges and to go for it.
My advice to a young person in politics is, if you firmly believe that you want to make a change in society, grab it with both hands and run and really try your best. You'll not get everything right, and certainly in my 10 years I've had so many learning curves and different experiences, but if you want to make a change in the area and the community that you live in and that you work in and that you have grown up in, politics, go for it, and just don't look back, just keep looking forward. And I think whenever I was leaving tech, one of my lecturers said to me, if you aim for the moon and you miss the moon, you're sure to be among the stars. So aim high.
My advice for a young woman who would want to get involved in politics is do it. It's not always a public role. I never in a million years would have thought that I would have ended up in a public role. I always wanted to work in policy behind the scenes. But there's so many different jobs in politics, and each of them are equally as important. And I think for young women in general, despite an increasingly hostile world for women, I think it's really important that you learn that it's okay to love yourself and just to believe in yourself.
The one piece of advice I would give is don't put any barriers up for yourself, because there's already enough there. And that was given to me a few years ago, and I've never forgot it. And I do believe that there are sometimes seemingly unsurmountable amounts of barriers out there to get to where you're going, but never forget that there's many ways to get to the end game.
Yes, I think politics is a very interesting job, extremely exciting, but one thing I would say, have another career first. Even if it was only for 5 years, I do believe you get a more rounded viewpoint when you've actually worked with wider society before going into politics.
Don't put it off and don't be afraid, right? Because, you will get moments when you feel insecure. You will get moments when you're thinking, what on God's earth am I doing? You will have a crisis of confidence in all of these things. But if you can help one person, it makes it all worthwhile. So there's a lot of things about this job that I'm doing that I don't like. There's a lot of things that make me very frustrated and angry. But I keep a wee box of like thank you cards or notes that people have written that I've been able to help. And I've had the privilege, and it is a privilege, of being able to help people who are really struggling and just to be there for them. And when you're able to do that, it makes all of the frustrations, all of the insecurities go away. So, and it's a wonderful feeling. It is an absolute buzz. So I would say to people, persevere and do it, because the sense of reward and satisfaction that you get from being able to help people is really wonderful.
Any young woman that wants to be involved in politics, what I would say to them is, don't think of politics as a career, because if you do, you will be the boring shirt person with the tie on that nobody will want to look at. Get life experience. Go out there and be an activist in your community, because that's real politics. Go out there in your community associations or a club with young people in it, your youth club, your church, whatever it may be, whatever floats your boat. Get involved. Be active. Have that civic sense of duty. Go out there and do something that excites you. Politics fits you. You don't fit politics. So you go out and find out what your skills are. Go out there and be the best that you possibly can be. Change something in your community. It might be the tiniest little thing. It could be litter picking on a beach on a Saturday. It could be anything at all, but that could determine your future. And if it's going to be in politics, then it'll fall to politics.
It's the best job ever. It's a great job. It's exciting. It's if you like to engage in changing the world for the better, it's the only place to be.